Hi, welcome to lesson 1.5. Today it's all about the Anishinabe. We are going to learn what characteristics the Anishinabe had within their culture and how they organized their society. So stick around and let's learn something. What are some of the characteristics of Anishinaabe culture? Lesson 1.5. We've already learned about two of our First Nation groups, cultures. We had the Mi'kmaq and the Haudenosaunee. So today it's all about the Anishinaabe. So, who were the Anishinaabe and where did they live? Well, they lived in the wooded areas of northern and central Ontario and in southern Manitoba. And you can see on the picture here, they also go into the United States. They're around the Great Lakes area. And although we say they are part of Canada's First Nations, Canada and the United States, these are borders that were developed much later on. So the Anishinaabe and all of our First Nations, they didn't have actual borders like what we have today, political borders. So you can see there on the image, that's where they are. And the Europeans called them the Ojibwe or the Saulteaux, but Anishinaabe is their name for themselves, and it means the people. And over time, they moved west onto the plains of Saskatchewan. You can see on the image there. So they moved westward, and we will learn why they were doing that in a few slides. So, Anishinaabe Worldview. And you'll see that Anishinaabe, the way it's spelled here, it's Anishinabe. Sometimes they throw in, you'll see it, especially lately, it's two A's, B-E. But that's just a side note. So, Anishinaabe Worldview. Well, they lived their lives according to 7 main values. So they believed in wisdom, love, respect, bravery, honesty, humility, and truth. Wisdom was to cherish the knowledge of the people. Love is to know and understand peace. Honor all creation is the value of respect. Facing your foes is bravery. Honesty is when you are facing a situation. Humility is to know yourself, and then to know all of these things is to know truth. And so those are the 7 main values. And you can see on the image here, we have 7 people that are kind of lining the night sky, speaking those 7 values. And in the previous image, we saw the picture there of those 7 values, and it was a circle. And the Anishinaabe, they had a food cycle, a seasonal cycle, which was also a circle. They were hunter and gatherers, and they would hunt for game, both large and small. But they also were unique in the fact that they had something called wild rice. And this was central to their food source. This was really important to the Anishinaabe, was this wild rice. And it was something that the other First Nations did not have. So this set the Anishinaabe apart from those other First Nations. Because although they were hunters and gatherers, to harvest wild rice means you also have some sort of farming culture as well. So they have a creation story somewhat, like all First Nation cultures do. And theirs is revolving around the 7 grandfathers. And the 7 grandfathers are seen as the watchers of Earth's people. And they sent a gift down to humans in the form of a little boy. Because the humans were weak in body and spirit. And they sent down this little boy to teach about these, to learn about these very important directions and colors. So the boy grew amongst the people into a good and honest person. And the grandfathers showed the boy these 4 colors, which are directions. White to the north, yellow to the east, red to the south, and black to the west. And It was all about certain medicines that you're going to plant, and the different stages of life that you are in, and where you are in mind, body, and soul. And the grandfathers shared this with the boy, and then the boy went back to his people and shared this knowledge. And then the people they were no longer weak in body and spirit; they became strong in body and spirit. And all four of these colors, all four of these directions, in the center, you are then a balanced individual. And that's what was central to the Anishinabe. And they used this because they were the hunters and they were the gatherers, and this just brought balance to them in addition to their seasonal cycle. When it comes to women, and this is the third First Nation group that we are learning about the role of women. Women were balanced and equal to that of men, but men and women had specific jobs that needed to be done within the Anishinaabe culture and nation. So women, for example, just like what we saw with the other First Nations that we learned, they cared for children, they maintained the home, they hunted small game, so like rabbits and things like that. They harvested the crops, which for the majority of the Anishinaabe is going to be that wild rice, but they also had other crops as well, other vegetables that they would harvest, wild rice being the most important. And they prepared the community to survive the winter. Winter in that part of Canada can get extremely harsh. It's very dangerous. So it was the women's role to prepare that entire community to survive the winter. Wild rice harvesters. The rice stalks, they were very important to the Anishinaabe. And the rice, they grow in these tall stalks. And each stalk was cordoned off and it tied with a different color. And that color represented the different families from within the Anishinabe. And they didn't just do this with the rice. They also did this with maple trees. So they would use an axe, and each family would mark the tree in their own way, and then they could then get the maple from that tree when it was time to do the harvest. And they did the same thing with the rice, which ensured that the families had equal amounts and they had fair amounts to survive whatever conditions that they were in. And when it came to harvesting the rice, there was actually very specific rules that they needed to follow. Only children and women were allowed to harvest. That was their role, that was their job. The men, they were out and they were responsible for hunting, but the women and children, they were the ones that had to do the rice harvest. The harvest was a communal activity, which means all the women and all the children from within the Anishinaabe groups, they would come together and they would harvest the wild rice together. They needed to use traditional techniques as to not harm the rice stalk. So you don't want to damage any stalk that is not ready to be harvested. So they would only do so using traditional techniques. Once the Europeans come and the Europeans share some different farming techniques, it was very important that the Anishinaabe still use those traditional techniques to keep the stalks and allow them to survive. And it was really important that not all the wild rice was harvested in 1 year. You needed to leave a percentage unharvested to ensure that you have enough seed available to harvest for the next year and the year after that and for future generations. So you don't want to deplete your rice stock all in 1 year, so you can ensure that you've got food to last you years and generations as well. Like the Mi'kmaq and the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe had their own way of solving problems and making decisions. The Anishinaabe lived with extended families in lodges. The Haudenosaunee lived in longhouses. The Anishinaabe lived in these lodges. And these lodges together would make up a village, and each village would take care of themselves. So, and it wasn't uncommon that they would see each other. They would see each other on occasion, different villages, but they mostly just stayed to themselves and took care of themselves. And sometimes they did need to cooperate in short-term alliances with other villages, but for the most part, like I said, they stayed on their own. And because of that, they needed to create a clan system in order to meet their needs. And each village became their own type of clan, and the clans were to offer protection and food, medicine, education, leadership. And they would look at these clans to do these types of things. So like the fish clan, for example, you can see here on the image, those were your educators. The hoof clan are your caregivers. Now your textbook uses a different name, I forgot what it was. Then we've got the providers, and then we've got the external leaders with internal leaders. Those are your cranes and your loons. Spiritual leaders, that's your bird, and your safety and doctoring, so your medicine, is your bear clan. And the clan system was made so that they could carry out the good for the entire nation, not just individual villages, but for the entire nation. They worked together. So they had these alliances. Yes, they were short term. They didn't often mix with other villages, but when they needed to, then the clan system was there in order to meet all of their needs. And to make decisions, each clan then had its own leader. And these leaders, very similar to what we saw with the other First Nations, the Haudenosaunee and the Mi'kmaq, they were chosen because of their courage, because of their character, and because they were skilled hunters. If you are these things, and we've talked about this in our class discussions, if you are these three things, then there's a very good chance that you are a natural leader and a strong leader at that. I mentioned the loon and the crane clan in the previous slide, and the crane and loon clans, they made decisions that affected the whole community. So if you were part of the crane clan, the crane village, then you were dealing with matters outside of your community. So you were doing the external factors. The loon clan was within their own individual community. And oftentimes, it's very common, just like with you don't get along with everybody. There are going to be issues. And then that's where the fish clan came in, and then they would settle disputes between all the various clans, if there were any disputes that needed settling. All right, I want you to head over to your notebook and complete the questions that we have for today.